بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Today we're looking at the chapter what is reported on the ruqa, exorcism, and the use of amulets, the tama'im. The Shaykh says here, Imam Shaykh al-Islam, that it's reported in Sahih al-Bukhari on the authority of Abu Bashir al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who narrated that it was in the company of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam during some of his travels, the journeys. He said, then he sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent the messenger to proclaim, no string collars or collars should remain on the neck of any camel except that it should be cut off. That hadith in Bukhari. So here Shaykh Ibn al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he comments saying that the word ruqa, exorcism, or sometimes referred also as ruqya, he refers here, the Shaykh's statement, when he says ruqya or ruqa and amulets, he didn't mention shirk in the chapter title because the ruling differs regarding wearing charm rings and twines in accordance to the person using it. So the author was unequivocal in the first chapter that it was from shirk. In the previous chapter we said that it was from shirk to wear strings or to hang amulets and likes. But here he didn't do it because, as we learned, that it differs in accordance to the person. And then he says, however, in this chapter he didn't mention the shirk because some forms of it may not be shirk. So he said, what is reported about ruqa and amulets? Now the statement ruqa is a plural of the word ruqya, which means incantation or recitation. It said raqa alayhi, which means that he was exercised, which implies that something was read onto him. And the word tama'im is the plural of the word tamima, which is referred to as that which is worn to protect against the evil eye. So then the companion Abu Bashir al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said he was with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in some of his journeys, right, which is here mentioning this. And the meaning here, right, is Shaykh's mentioned there's a number of meanings of the word journey. It's a departure from one place of abode, but it can also have as two meanings. One is a sensuous reason, like a tangent reason, which one goes out and lives in a town. And the second meaning is abstract, the ma'nawi meaning, which is that he shows the character of people. So you would know the people's character, manners, and nature except through travel. So the word travel sometimes is used like this, in both angles. Sometimes to literally when you're going from one place to another place. And sometimes it's just used to mean that when you travel, you learn people's character. Right? Then he comes and he says now, in regards to these qala'id, these string collars, and that comes from the Rawi. The Rawi said, qiradatun min watar or qala'id, just by themselves. The Shaykh said the first is most correct because the collars used were made from strings. So min watar here implies they were made from strings, and that's the most correct opinion. It's not just strings by them, strings alone, right, or necklaces alone. And so the hadith mentions here, أن لا يبقين في رقبة بعير قلادة من وتر أو قلادة. So the word قلادة من وتر is more correct, means made of string, not just قلادة by itself. But Shaykh says here, nonetheless, it's incorrect to hang any of these things because it is not an approved means. And so it becomes shirk by hanging it. And if he would be affirming these as means needed due to legitimacy and practicality. So we mentioned last week in the chapter, taking a means which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not establish as a means, then that will be considered shirk asghar. But then believing in that means in and of itself can cure, then it's shirk akbar. The Shaykh says, thus the Prophet ﷺ ordered that these collars be cut off. However, if the collars are not made from strings, but are only used to guide animals, such as bridles, then there is no blame due to the absence of erroneous belief. People do not use that as a great deal from wool or other materials. So the fact that we learn from this is that the prohibition is intended if someone is using it with the erroneous belief, with the belief that this can be a means. As for just putting a bridle with a string or other material on an animal to guide the animal, then this is not included because someone does not have that belief. And to explain this as well, Hafid ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, he mentions in Fath al-Bari, وعن Malik, it is important for Malik, rahimahullah, that he specified the dislike, the karahiyah, the dislike of such qala'id, such collars, and the likes, and it was allowed to hang other than it if the intent is not to deflect the evil eye. As he mentions in Fath al-Bari, volume 7, page 258. So if something is worn onto the animal, or put on the animal, not intending by that the belief that it can deflect the evil eye, then it's okay. So the example Shaykh gives like bridles on the animal. And the reason why Malik mentions here the karahiyah is because Hafid ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentions Fath al-Bari, there's a khilaf between the ulama. Is it disliked or haram to wear such things? And so Imam Nawawi, he quotes Imam Nawawi in Sharh Sahih Muslim as saying that the majority of ulama saw it to be a dislike. That was a prohibition of dislike, not a prohibition of forbiddance. But what seems to be correct, the Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen's argument, it's forbidden. Or this is what seems to be the correct opinion, because the Prophet ﷺ said to cut it off. And so when you see the wording here, dislike, that's why he said dislike, because if you go back to the source, you see he talks about that. Then he says, and he said the neck of the camel, the Prophet mentioned the camel because in most times it was prevalent at that time that he would put on the camel. So this is the most common. Now, some benefits we've taken in the hadith. Number one, that the elderly among the people should be concerned with their situation, so he should not look for them and see to their affairs. So he should look for them and see to their affairs. So someone who's elderly in the community should look out for the community and try to prohibit or warn if anything's wrong or to correct them. Number two, he should guide them according to the Sharia. If they engage in anything forbidden, he forbids them, and whenever they are lax in obligation, he exhorts them. This is important. Number three, he is not allowed to hang around the necks of animals objects as regarded as means of attracting benefits or averting evil. While such things are actually not beneficial legally or feasibly. So doing so is shirk. The string may not necessarily be on the neck. Even if it's hanging on the leg or the hand of an animal, it has the same ruling as hanging on the neck. That is because the cause is the same. And the intent here, this place is the same. Number four, it's obligatory upon whoever has the ability to correct an evil with his hand to do so. So next, he quotes Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu saying, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, certainly ruqa, tamima, and tibra are all shirk. Reported by Ahmed Abu Dawud is an authentic hadith. So now, he's going to, Shaykh al-Islam quotes the second hadith to show in regards to the issue of incantations and amulets. So the hadith states, Inna ruqa wa tama'im wa tibarata shirkun. So here the Shaykh says the word ruqa is a plural of the word ruqya, as we said earlier. And in the hadith, it's very general. It refers to ruqya which is not approved by Sharia. Because some may say, how come the Rasul says Inna ruqa wa tama'im wa tibarata shirkun, when we know another hadith the Rasul praised us to use or encouraged us to use the ruqya. So Shaykh says here what is intended by this statement, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is to prohibit ruqya, i.e. the one that has shirk in it. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in the hadith, right, talking about the authentic ruqya, as the hadith, for example, of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, when the Sahaba they performed ruqya using Fatiha, he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told them that, how do you know? وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ أنها رقية. What did you know? What made you know that it is a ruqya? وما يدريك أنها رقية. What led you to believe and know that it was a ruqya? Hadith is Bukhari Muslim. So that shows that the proper ruqya is allowed. It's not included in this wording or this intent. So, Shaykh says here, does ruqya in this hadith refer to what the Sharia has not approved, even if it's permissible, or does it mean that it involves shirk? And the answer is the second view. So whatever includes shirk, that kind of ruqya is not permitted. And the answer is the second view. So the lawful ruqya which the Sharia has approved is permissible. Likewise, other permissible forms of ruqya that a person recites in incantation to cure the sick, way of supplication which do not involve shirk are also allowed. So you can do also dua which don't have shirk in it. And that shows us then that the ruling is that ruqya in general, the ulama have agreed that it's permissible. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, and we're going to get there later on, the condition of ruqya, and that is if it doesn't have, one of them is that if the condition of ruqya to be allowed is it doesn't have shirk. Hadith is in Sahih Muslim, Auf bin Malik al-Asja'i, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, that the Messenger said to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we used to perform ruqya in Jahiliyyah. So what do you think about that, Ya Rasulullah? So he said sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, مَا بَأْسِ بِالرُّقْيَا مَا لَمْ يَكُنْ فِيهِ شِرْكٌ. There is no harm in ruqya as long as there's no shirk in it. So here Hadith Muslim teaches us that the shirk is absent, one of the three conditions necessary for permissible ruqya. So in this hadith, in the ruqa, it's not included ruqya shar'iyya. Ruqya shar'iyya is not included. Next, at-tama'im. What is a tama'im? It's also defined by saying it's something, an object that hung around the children to avert evil eye. So it's a form of shirk because the lawgiver, the shari', Allah, has not approved that as a means of averting evil eye. If a person, now the Shaykh mentioned, what is a tama'im? Tama'im is that which is hung on the neck of the children to avert against evil eye. And it's not permissible because Allah, the shari', didn't legislate it. Now, Shaykh asked the question, if a person dresses his children in tattered and worn out clothes out of fear of evil eye, is that permissible? Someone's afraid that if I put on my kids good clothes, evil eye will hit them. So can I put on them clothes they don't have are not very good looking? Shaykh said apparently there is nothing wrong with that. Because he has not done anything, he's only left out something, a beautification and adornment. And Imam Ibn Qayyim, he mentioned in Zad Ma'ad that Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu saw a good looking child and said to him, soil his nuna. And what he means by this, the nuna is, right, the cheek of the child with his smile, the dimples. So Uthman instructed him to put something dark on his cheeks in order that the kids, other people will not give him evil eye. It means he will see he has some kind of marks and he's not as good looking. Because when he's good looking, it gives other people will look at the child and then give it the evil eye out of the beauty that it has. So based on this, Shaykh took the view, Shaykh was saying that it's permissible to dress your kid in less expensive clothing or tattered clothing in order to divert the evil eye. So we need to look in then, is this narration mentioned, authentic narration? And the narration mentioned here, Imam al-Qayyim quotes it in Zad Ma'ad. And the origin of the narration is mentioned by Imam al-Baghawi in his Sharh al-Sunnah, volume 12, page 166. However, this narration comes without a chain of narration. Bidun isnad, it has no chain of narration. Also, Al-Khattabi, he mentions in his Kitab, Gharib al-Hadith, volume 2, page 139, he mentions this narration along with an explanation of the word Nuna. That it also does not have a change in narration. So Wallahu A'lam, it cannot be authenticated that Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said this. However, some of the ulama, like Imam Ibn Qayyim and Ibn Uthaymeen, took that view that you can use that as proof to dress in your children or oneself in less clothing in order to deflect the evil eye. Before we continue, I want to mention the back story for the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud we narrated earlier in the ruqa wa tama'im wa tiwal tashirk. What's the back hadith for this, or what's the context, the siyaqah or siyaq of the hadith? It comes in the full version of the hadith that Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu أنه دخل على امرأته وفي عنقها شيء معقول. Ibn Mas'ud walked into his house and he found his wife with something hung on her neck. So he took it and he snatched it off her neck and he destroyed it. He ripped it off. And he said, لقد أصبح آل عبد الله أغنى من أغنياء لقد أصبح آل عبد الله أغنياء عن يشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا. He said that the family of Abdullah, means him, Mas'ud, have already become free of any need for shirk, associating partners with Allah without which Allah did not send down an authority approved for. It means that this action is a type of shirk. And then he said, I heard the Messenger said, in the ruqa wa tama'im wa tiwal tashirkun. And then they asked me, Abu Abdul Rahman, we know what ruqya is, an amulet. What is this tiwala? And he said, tiwala is something that women, they make in order to make their husbands love them more. So type of action or type of action done in order to make women more beloved to the husbands. So that's what tiwala means. As Ibn Abdul Qaadir mentioned here, the tiwala means an item that is hung around the bridegroom in order to create the love between the bride and the bridegroom. And the tafsir for that explanation from Ibn Mas'ud himself, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And so Shaykh Albani authenticated this full version of hadith in his Kitab At-Tawheed, number 298, page 298, or hadith number 298, and other places as well. So now we know that Ibn Mas'ud himself acted upon this hadith, but also that he declared it as shirk, just as the Prophet ﷺ declared it shirk. Now continuing, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen then says that as regards to khat, it refers to pages of the Quran folded and placed in a piece of leather and then sewn. So there's a type of tama'im where people take a piece of the Quran, they write it in some specific type of leather, and they tie it around like next to the children or the hands, and they say it's going to protect the child from evil eye. Is this allowed? The Shaykh says they're different, the ulama, in this. And regarding this, on the face of it, based on the hadith, is forbidden. So face value, the zahir of the hadith says you can't do that because it's a type of tama'im. And he says then, it includes some of the people writing the entire Quran with tiny scripts on very small sheets of paper. They would place it in a small box, hang on the neck of the child. Ta'weez, or ta'weez they call it, right? So Shaykh says here, aside the fact that this is innovation, it's bid'ah, and it's disrespect for the Quran. The child's saliva can fall in it, it can become soiled, you can go to the washroom with it, all of these things. So that's disrespect, it's a bid'ah, it's not in the hadith, apparently it's prohibiting it. And people will do things without befitting the Quran. And then he says, unfortunately, from the acts of virtue, some of the people only consider acts of seeking blessings. So people nowadays have been afflicted with seeking blessings from things. And so, for example, they will go to the Yemeni corner of the Kaaba and they wipe their face and chest of the child on it, or they rub their hands on it and seek blessings. And this is pure ignorance, Shaykh says, sheer ignorance. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said about the black stone, I know you are a stone which neither harms nor benefits. If it's not that I saw the Messenger of kissing you, we would not have kissed you. Hadith Bukhari. So we see how the Sahaba understood what tabarruk, shar'i is. And then versus that which is of nowadays. So the Shaykh in here, despite this difference, what is correct is not law. Because this is number one, an innovation, and number two, the apparent word of the hadith prohibits such actions. And did the Sahaba and Salaf just didn't say, we don't have proof. Even though we know that some people may quote some opinions to say that it's allowed. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't legislate that and didn't allow teach us that. We explain what tiwala means. And then now she's going to take a side tour, or side benefit, in regards to wedding rings. The dubla is a ring which is worn during weddings and worn on a groom's finger. Whenever the husband moves, the wife thinks that he doesn't love her. He believes that it attracts benefit or averts harm. And that is, as long as it remains in the hand of the husband, it indicates the relationship is firm and vice versa. If it is used with such an intention, it's a wedding ring, then it's a minor shirk. But if not, which is far from possible, then it's at least imitating the Christians since it came from them. So now we see what is the ruling of wearing wedding rings. So first is an innovation. And it's also a type of imitating disbelievers. And we know the hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum. Whoever imitates the people, then he's from them. As the Shaykh says, if someone believes, the bride or the groom, they believe, if you put it on the finger, then it can avert harm, bring about benefit, and strong love, and removing it means his own love, and likes of this, it's a minor shirk. Why? Because you can get means to bring about benefit or deflecting harm, as you mentioned last week, and that's minor shirk. Now Shaykh continues, if it's made of gold, in respect to males, that's another evil. And the third evil, say if he uses the gold itself. So the first of it is that, minor shirk, it can be if he has a belief with it. And number two, it's imitating of disbelievers. And number three, if it's made of gold, it's even more prohibited. Because men cannot wear gold. So the Shaykh says, thus it's either shirk or imitation of the Christians, or in the case of men, prohibited of its very nature, because it's gold. However, if it is not used in any of these forms, then it's permissible, just as in any other ordinary ring. And so we benefit also is that we should be wary of that. And as far as we know, and Sahaba and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they got married, we don't know that they used to wear particular rings to signify the status of marriage. And in relation to this, I want to read some speech, also from Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen, which I translated some time ago, in relation to the ruling on such wedding rings. So as the Shaykh mentions here, he also mentions another place in his other work, this custom, he mentions the question, what is the ruling on using rings after an engagement or wedding contract for men and women? So he said this custom is found nowadays in some of the Islamic lands. So wife and husband gets ringed with the name of the husband, the ring on the wife's name, another ring. And this action consists of a number of prohibitions. Number one, associating with the Aqidah, that is from the means of affection between the spouses. And the people of knowledge mention this is from shirk. Because in affairs like this, is not affirmed in legislation. So it would become then a tiwala type of a type of action into bringing about love. Number two, Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen says that Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah mentioned that the origin of this action from the Christians. And this statement of Shaykh Al-Albani can actually be found in his Kitab, Adab al-Zafaf, page 212 and 213. Shaykh Al-Albani talks about the origin of this. Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen benefited of Shaykh Al-Albani from this angle and said that Shaykh Al-Albani mentioned that when they want to get married, the spouses, they go to the priest and he places his hand in the hand of the husband or the wife, and it says in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Then he runs his hand between theirs and places the ring on the finger specified for it, so the ring finger. And then he runs his hand between. Then he says, this is with the belief that in there is a vein. And the Shaykh mentions that he believes that in there is a vein that specifies the love. And so by putting it there, then it's going to create love between the spouses. The Shaykh said then, this is a great prohibition, imitating the Christians. And it's prohibited even without the Aqidah, which the Shaykh mentioned earlier. So it's haram from saying that. Shaykh Al-Albani clarifies that this was actually mentioned by the Christians themselves. That they believe that they're in the vein of the finger. There's a belief that one vein running there is a vein of love and affection. So when the ring is placed there, the affection will grow. And the Shaykh quotes this actually in Adab al-Zafaf, page 212 and 213, and he attributes it to the Women's Magazine from London, issue number 19, 1970. Shaykh actually has it in it with the English translation. And it's answered by a woman named Angela Talbot. And she answers this question, which says I benefit from another person who translated it. And that shows that from them themselves they mention that such a belief is there. And on top of that, right, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen says it's also made of gold, as he mentioned earlier, and he probably mentions the hadith to prohibit the gold. And he finishes his opinion on this. And you can find Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen's second opinion on this in Sharh al-Mumta', volume 6, page 68 to 69. So that's what Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen mentions these three things, similar to what he mentions in al-Qawl Al-Mufeed. And likewise, we mentioned Shaykh Al-Albani in Adab al-Zafaf, page 212 to 213. Also, the Permanent Committee, he also mentioned the prohibition and innovation of such action in Hadith Fatwa number 4644. In the English translation, you can find it. And also Shaykh Salih Fawzan, his Kitab Al-Fatawa. So this is a number of scholars mentioning this. So what is interesting is that, at the very least, imitation is one thing, which is not good. And if it's made of gold, it's also not Allah. But then worse is that, if it's connected to the Aqidah. Because then it will become a tiwala. Now we see the severity of an issue. And a Muslim should be wary of that which affects the Aqidah. And then the Shaykh continues then, he mentions then another hadith from Abdullah ibn Uqaym radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in marfu' form. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that man ta'allaqa shay'an bukira ilayhi, whoever hangs on to anything, then he will be abandoned to it. And this hadith in reality is a da'if hadith. It has a weakness. But the word tama'im, we mentioned earlier, is an object hung around the necks of children. So now the Shaykh says that the word, he explains the hadith, and he says the word shay'an in the hadith, despite its weakness, it's indefinite now, in the context of a condition. And he says that a person who connects himself with Allah and places his zeal and hope in Him seeks to remove his despair by Him. So in reality, despite the hadith being weak, the benefit we learn that we should put our trust in Allah. And we should connect ourselves to Allah. As Allah says, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever puts his trust in Allah, Allah will suffice him. And that is sufficiency. Thus the supplication the Messenger ﷺ during times of difficulty was, حَسْبُنَ اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. Sufficient for us is Allah, and how excellent of a guardian is He. And likewise Ibrahim ﷺ said the same when he was thrown in the fire, as it comes to Hadith Ibn Abbas, Bukhari. And the Messenger ﷺ's companions also said this, And they said, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَخْشَوْهُم. People have gathered around you. It means a battle. And they have gathered around you great armies. So they said, حَسْبُنَا وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. And so we benefit from this, that the hadith is showing us that we should put our connection, trust in Allah. And then the Shaykh says, you abandon him to it. Which means, connecting to other than Allah has different degrees. Number one, first level, is that which basically negates Tawheed. And that's when he connects with something that cannot have any impact. He then depends on it and leaving Allah, such as the connection of the grave worshippers with the grave to solve their problem. The grave cannot benefit them at all. So they've left Allah and put the connection to the grave. The second group or category is that which negates the perfection of Tawheed. And that is when he depends on a means approved in the Sharia and being good but is neglectful of Allah, the one who is the mudabbir, the disposer of affairs. So this person also falls in the form of shirk. But we will say that it's not major shirk, but minor. It means that somebody, he depends on that which is legislated, but he puts more trust in that than Allah. And he puts more of his, connects more to that than with Allah, the one who is that true benefit, the one who brings about everything good and benefit, and deflects harm. Third is that he connects with a means only merely for being a means. Someone who connects to something because it is legislated means, but his true reliance is on Allah. That person is doing the true Tawheed. Then the Shaykh continues, and he mentions some more in relation to this. And Shaykh Islam then mentions in the next part of the chapter that some of the earlier scholars have discussed, Salaf Salih, is that it's permissible to use the Quran as a type of ruqya, or type of tama'im and like this. And he said that they given this connections to it. The Ibn Saud did not concede to that. So here in relation to what Shaykh is saying here, that some of them allowed wearing the Quran, as I mentioned earlier, as something permissible, some of the Salaf. However, Ibn Saud was as view you cannot. The Shaykh says here, now if the attached object is from the Quran or permissible supplications and reported formulas of remembrance, the Salaf Salih have different on this. Some of them have given allowance and some have not. Because they say those who permitted it to wear the Quran or the Adhkar, Allah Dua, they said, why is it permissible? Because Allah says, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. And we reveal the Quran, that which is a healing and mercy for the believers, and it increases the evildoers only in ruin. Surah Isra, Ayah 82. So here they use this and say the Quran is secure, so it's allowed to do this. As for regarding the Quran to be like a physical medicine. So some of them rejected this and said it's not permissible to hang the Quran to seek healing, because seeking the cure with the Quran is important in a specific manner. And reciting it is how we do it. And that is, you have to recite it upon the sick. So we should not exceed the limits. If we allow seeking cure from the Quran and a man and not reporting the Sunnah, then it will imply that it have been a means that's unapproved by the Sharia. And that is a more correct view. And this is why Ibn Saud prohibited, because to do so wasn't known by the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran was revealed as a cure, but to be recited upon the sick. And to be recited. And that was the way we know to cure people. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ, Sahaba, like Nahid Abu Sa'id, they read the Fatiha upon the man who had the evil eye. They didn't hang it on him or anything of this nature. And so that's why the Shaykh said here, if not only for the mere impression that hanging the Quran is a means of cure, will itself remove this issue. He says because such attachments don't have any connection with the element contrary to slightly blowing on the affected area, which impacts the area. And that's because if somebody is sick, to blow on the Quran or recite on him will affect the area that's sick more than if you just hang on it. And for that reason, you see in Ruqya that some light blowing is used. Some spitless blowing is used in Ruqya as a type of cure. So therefore, Shaykh says the most correct opinion and most appropriate is that it's not appropriate to hang the Quran to seek cure, or more so, when a person hanging on such a thing may do so, thinks that this was a cure, that he might violate the sanctity of the Quran. By why? Wearing it to places that are not befitting, like the washroom and the likes of this. So for example, some people say they hang Ayatul Kursi on their person's chest. As long as it's on the chest, I will not recite it. So he suffices with unapproved means, forgetting the approved means. Means that he hangs it, thinking this is sufficient, forgetting that we're supposed to read Ayatul Kursi. And when we die the Kursi, we know that he teaches that shaitan wants, flees, the shaitan jinn. So therefore, Shaykh says, despite this different, what is correct is that it's not allowed. And then he says now, and such a thing like this wasn't even reported from the Prophet ﷺ that he ever hung anything on anybody or himself. Then the Shaykh says, Shaykh Hussain says that ruqa is also called azaim. It's another way of saying it. And it's permissible to do ruqya as long as it's free of shirk. And Shaykh al-Uthaymeen then, and he says that in terms of the tiwala, Shaykh says, Shaykh al-Islam, tiwala means that which is prepared, which they think makes a woman to be loved by her husband and the man love his wife. So the word azaim is used to refer to ruqya. Why? Because Shaykh says azaim alayhi means something he reads upon somebody. And he says here the evidence is only permit from it that which is free of shirk. So shirk should not be the ruqya. If the ruqya is free of it, that's one of the conditions for the ruqya to be authentic. The example, the Prophet used to do ruqya, Allahumma Rabb al-Nas, idhab al-Bas, ishfi anta shafi. This dua is a type of permissible dua the Prophet used to use in the ruqya and curing people. O Lord of mankind, take away the ailment, cure, you are the cure. And also, Allahumma aafihi, Allahumma ishfihi, O Allah, cure him, O Allah, grant him recovery. But if it contains shirk, then it's not permissible. Such as, O jinn, deliver him, O so-and-so, cure him. You cannot say that. He's saying from the cures, he's saying here, Shaykh Hussain then says, that one can use ruqya. So as an example, min ayn aw al-huma. You can use ruqya to prevent against the evil eye, or to use it to also prevent against poisonous bites of insects. So now, Shaykh Hussain mentioned these, but it's not limited to these two. How do we know those two? Because remember the hadith we covered a long time ago, the hadith of Sa'id ibn Jubayr from Ibn Abbas. That when this tabi'i got stung, he asked him, what did you do? It was Hussein. And he said, well, I did ruqya. And he said, why? He said, because I heard from Sha'bi, from Burayda, the Rasul said that there is no ruqya except from ayn and huma. So that these two are permissible to ruqya, from evil eye and from insect bites. And we actually have proof the Prophet did both. But then now the Shaykh also mentioned, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, that it's also part of the Prophet ﷺ. He used to do mu'awwadhatayn, the Bukhari, he used to read Falaq al-Nas and wipe over his body. It's also a form of ruqya. And that's not even pertaining to evil eye or to the insect bite. So the correct opinion is that it's the hadith that says that there's no ruqya except for the evil eye and insect bites is not specifying that it's limited to that. You could do other means too. And Shaykh later on will mention that. Things like, for example, sihr. Somebody has magic done on them, you can use ruqya to get it off. Or the Prophet says being mu'awwadhatayn for sickness. And then he says here that there should be no ruqya. He explained the Shaykh here that what's intended here is not to say that you cannot do it any other way. Now he mentions the three conditions necessary for the permissible ruqya. So for ruqya to be legislated, there are three things you need. Number one, that it should not be believed that it benefits independent without Allah's will. Somebody should not believe that this ruqya is in and of itself curing somebody. It's Allah who is the cure. It's Allah who is allowing it. So we cannot believe independently that ruqya can bring about the benefit or the harm. It's only Allah. Number two, that it should not be from that which negates the sharia, such as supplicating to other than Allah, or has any type of shirk. So number two, you can't have shirk in there. You cannot have shirk. And number three, condition for ruqya to be permissible is that it should be known and understandable. So it should be in a language and in wordings people understand, whether it be Arabic or outside of Arabic. It should not, Shaykh says, it should not be some kind of a quackery, some language people don't know, that is said by people and no one knows what they are saying. Because then it can lead to shirk and magic. So someone reading something and we don't know what they're reading, we can't understand that. So Shaykh says if it has these, then it's permissible. And this is what also Shaykh Abdul Riyani, when I preserver, mentions in his Kitab, Sifatul Ruqya Nabi, and Hafid ibn Hajar rahimahullah said that ruqya, the ulama have agreed, the scholars have agreed, that ruqya is permissible if it meets three conditions. And they mentioned number one, that it must be with the speech of Allah, His names or His attributes. Number two, that it must be in Arabic language or any other language that's understood. And number three, that a person does not believe that in and of itself it is a cure. Means someone has to believe that Allah is the cure through that means, not that it cures by itself. So Ibn Hajj mentions 3, but they differ slightly. And he mentions this Shaykh al-Irani in his Sift al-Ruqya Nabi, page 15. So Shaykh al-Uthaymeen mentions 3, and then Ibn Hajj mentions 3, but we see they agree to them, except for that he mentioned that it must be from the speech of Allah or His names and attributes, or Shaykh al-Uthaymeen mentioned that, doesn't mention that, because it can be open also to dua. Now the last 2 things in this chapter has to do with a hadith reported by Imam Ahmad on the authority of the Sahabi Ruwayfi' radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, O Ruwayfi', perhaps you will live long. Tell the people that whoever knots his beard, ties knots in his beard, hangs any type of string around their neck, cleans themselves after the washroom using animal dung or bones, then Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is free of them. So here, this hadith is reported by Ahmad, and some scholars authenticate the hadith, like Shaykh al-Albani, and others like Shaykh Muhammad weaken it. So there's a slight difference in the wording of the authenticity of the hadith, but now the Shaykh is going to explain it. So this hadith is very powerful, because the Prophet said, and tell them, O Ruwayfi', that whoever does these things, فَإِنَّ مُحَمَّدًا بَرِيءٌ مِّنْهُمْ, Muhammad is free of them, which is proof, Shaykh says, and evidence, a major sin to do any of these things. So the first one is tying knots in the beard. The Arabs, they used to do this in Jahiliyyah, that they used to keep their beards, and like it's Sunnah, and they would tie in the beard for a number of reasons. One reason was out of pride and importance. So they would do it to show the people they're special people, or they're proud. Sometimes they do it in the middle shifts often, of his tribal leader. Number 2, they would do it out of fear of the evil eye. Because if it's someone who's good looking, nice beard, nice face, when they tie their beard, it doesn't look as good. So people will not give them the evil eye. They hope that by that, someone will not give them the evil eye. And so Shaykh says that in any case, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited this. Some of the ulama mentioned a third reason, which is during the war they used to do this. During the war. So Ibn Athir, in Al-Nihaya, he mentioned during the war the Arabs used to do this out of pride, to boast. And for that reason the Prophet ﷺ prohibited them. And that's why even some Shaykh, like Shaykh Abdul Qaadir, he mentioned this is from Masail Jahiliyyah. There's the additional types of Jahiliyyah that used to do this. So in Islam we're not allowed to tie our knots and beards. I mean, we find today, some other religious groups, they do this still. It is not Islamic. Number 2, hanging what's on the neck. And we already talked about this before. You cannot hang amulets on the neck. So the Prophet is prohibiting again this hadith. Number 3, using a bone or dung to purify yourself after using the washroom. Using it as a form of istinja or istijmar. And it's not permissible. When you use the washroom, there are rules of what you can use, like water, toilet paper, things like this. But the bones and what the Rasul mentioned also here, the bone and also the animal dung is prohibited. Why? The Shaykh says here, because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that once he met one of the jinn, or some of the group of the jinn, and the Prophet ﷺ told them in regards to this, that every time they pass by some bones, they will find in it meat that will come for them. Means that from their provisions is their bone. So the empty bone, the jinn, they eat from it. So the Prophet ﷺ granted them by Allah's permission, told them that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them that when they find the bones, they find in it meat. For bones for us, meat for them. And as for the animal feces, then the animal feces is for their animals. So we learn from this hadith, there's a hadith both in Muslim and in Tirmidhi, that the Sahaba, that we learned that the jinn have animals. And the Prophet ﷺ said that which they've done, which we're not allowed to use, that is for them, alafun, is a type of like food or fodder for their animals. So for those 2 reasons the Prophet ﷺ didn't allow us. He said, لَا تَسْتَنْجُوا بِهِمَا, do not use them as a type of istinja. لَا تَسْتَنْجُوا بِهِمَا فإنهما طعام لإخوانكم. They are food for your brothers, i.e. of the jinn. And so they benefit from the bones, and the animals benefit from the fodder. So now we learn a benefit. This hadith in Muslim, Tirmidhi, and others. And last part we mentioned for today is the issue regarding to removing these amulets. So it mentions a narration from Sa'id ibn Jubayr, radiyallahu rahimahullah, that once he saw a man wearing an amulet, and he cut it off and said, whoever cuts off an amulet from someone is like freeing a slave. So this wording is not authentic, this particular wording. What's authentic from Sa'id ibn Jubayr is that he saw someone wearing it and he cut it off himself. So we benefit from this, that cutting off the amulets for the one who's capable is it's a good thing to do. And it's something recommended. Because we learn now, wearing these things is a type of shirk. So he saw someone while making tawaf wearing it, and he cut it off from him. So we learn now, it's good to do that if you're able to. But this wording here that says that if whoever does this, كَعَدْلِ الرَّقَبَةِ, that is if you freed a free servant, a free slave, then it's not authentic, that wording. The second narration he brings, the Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, one of the Tabi'een said, they, which refers to the Sahaba, they used to abhor or dislike any kind of amulet, whether it be from Quran or outside of Quran. So here Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, he's from the older, right, Tabi'een, or from the Tabi'een. So when he says the Kanu, he's referring to here Ibn Mas'ud, since he was students of them. So he's saying here that they used to dislike all types. Kanu يكرهون التمائم كلها, all types of them. من القرآن بغير القرآن, from Quran or outside of Quran. So this is, like you mentioned earlier, true. That even using the Quran as a type of amulet, the correct opinion is you cannot. But this narration, according to the checkers of the hadith Kitab At-Tawheed, they mentioned this one is weak. But what he's saying is correct. So Shaykh says, like nowadays, you find people hanging the Quran, and we mentioned already that's not correct. And someone should instead do what is correct, not innovative, and should recite the Quran, for the Quran is pure, and we should do things the way the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us. And then the Shaykh finishes the chapter with the Masail, the important affairs, and perhaps another time we'll read from those. If anybody has any type of questions or likes, inshallah, they can ask.